No American will ever be able to seriously say again, my vote doesn't count.
24 hours after the polls closed, we still don't know who won, Al Gore or George Bush. And we will not know until tomorrow at the earliest.
You're the one, you broke the story about the election fraud during the 2000 election in which Choice Point, they had their hand in stealing the election for George W. Bush in Florida. And now Choice Point has a no-bid contract with the Department of Homeland Security. I was hoping you could tell us a little bit more about that.
Yeah, just back in 2000, a company called Choice Point and its unit, the Database Technologies. These are the early beginnings of the cyber spying, which has now gone completely berserk in America. Choice Point was keeping files on every American, and they got a no-bid contract from Jeb Bush's Florida government and Catherine Harris to hunt for illegal voters on the voter rolls, people that had supposedly committed felonies and aren't allowed to vote. And they tagged about 58,000 people. Turns out most of them were African-American men who simply had common names like Joe Black and Joe White and John Johnson. By the way, there are 86,020 John Johnsons in America. Or I should say John Jacksons in America. 53% of them are African American. One of them has probably committed a felony crime. That doesn't mean that the guy in Florida voting named John Jackson was also a felon. Turns out none of these people were guilty of anything but voting while black. They lost their vote. George Bush was elected president. Whether you like that outcome or not, it wasn't done by a vote of the people. It was done by a vote of this company, Choice Point, which provided the computer scrub lists for Catherine Harris. What was their payoff? They ended up with a fat, multi-billion, no-bid contract with the Department of Homeland Security. So they went from falsely tagging African-American voters as criminals to keeping track on you. And it was the beginning of the program. They used to call the program Total Information Awareness. Yep. And they had a pyramid with the all-seeing eye. And the all-seeing eye was this company, Choice Point, which figured out that if you set yourself out to hire, to manipulate elections, when you elect your boys, then they pay you off in fat contracts. It's about the money. It's really not a partisan question. It's a question of cash. As I always say, we don't have a two-party system. We have a one-party system. The party is Hezbollah Shekel, which is the party of the cash. That's what's going on. and now it's continued into this election, too, in a new form.
Well, didn't Choice Point, aren't they international now? Because I've heard they're stealing elections in Brazil, Venezuela. I guess once you help George W. Bush get in office, looks like they've been rewarded ever since.
Well, Choice Point's been bought up by all those companies that keep track of your credit ratings, like Axion and others. They've been absorbed into this kind of total financial national security tracking network.
Tracking DNA of Americans?
So, and that's the other thing. They ask you to send in hair samples from your kids so that in case they get kidnapped by aliens, you'll have their DNA. See, but what are they doing with your DNA information in the meantime? Okay, so yes, they were hired by our national security agencies to start mucking around, and we caught them with this in the voter rolls of Brazil and Venezuela and Argentina and Honduras and Mexico, because we didn't like who the people there were voting for. We're for democracy as long as our national security apparatus agrees with the vote choice you're making. This creates a bit of a problem for the United States, just like with Ed Snowden's discoveries that revelations that the phones of the president of Brazil and the president of Ecuador were tapped by our national security agencies.
That's right.
I'm not even sure what junk they find out about. It's the silliest stuff, but it's unfortunately it ruins the relations between the peoples of our nations when these kind of Austin Powers buffoons start pretending that they're actually spies getting us important information. You know what they're doing? They're actually getting information for companies like Monsanto. When I looked at I worked for The Guardian, which obtained the original WikiLeaks documents. I've looked through thousands of pages of the WikiLeaks documents. I'm going to tell you right now, there wasn't one single page of the thousands I've looked at, not one, which actually dealt with national security. You know, what like Al-Qaeda or guys trying to blow us up or, you know, light their underpants on fire in an airplane. No information about that would, you know, save American lives. Nothing, by the way, about ISIS. That took everyone by surprise. Nothing about Ebola. Nothing that's going to be of interest. Now, I was in Liberia. Then none of that is in those files. What's in those files is requests from U.S. corporations for intelligence information.
Big brother.
You know, that's what I was finding. That our military security apparatus is there at the behest of big companies, and that's what I found in the WikiLeaks files.
I can imagine. Well, let's talk about what else is on your radar. What do you expect to see as a result of the midterms here in the United States?
Mischief. What we're seeing now, I've uncovered in a story for Al Jazeera, which is crazy. I'm working, had to put this story in some network that's out of you know, the Arabian sands instead of the U.S. networks. But, you know, I got to go where they'll take the story. And in this story, I've uncovered a list. You know, our government loves to keep lists on you. They have a list of 3.5 million people that they say have voted twice. And by the way, one of the double voters, if you vote in 2 different states in the same election, that's a felony. You go to prison for 2 to 10 years. By the way, one of the voters that is on the suspect list is a guy named Alex Jones. Mm-hmm. So fire Alex, I'd go into hiding right away. The feds are looking for him. 3.5 million Americans are supposedly committing the crime of voting in 2 states in one election. Now, most Americans don't even get off the couch long enough to vote once, let alone twice. It's a phony. We don't have Americans voting in 2 different elections. No one's ever been able to nab anyone. You have about 1 person a year who gets caught doing it. It's real easy to get caught. You have your address on the voter form. So, you know, it's a phony, but it's a way to block voters from voting. So what they do is if your name's on the list, they'll send you a postcard. You don't even know what it is. It looks like a piece of junk mail. Throw it out, and boom, you suddenly walk in. You've lost your right to vote. You've lost your right to vote. 3.5 million Americans. And like I say, on that list, I'll show him his name is Alex Jones. And so, you know, I have a feeling that Alex wasn't voting in 2 states.
Yeah,
okay?
Probably not.
What they were doing is why they get Alex Jones, because Jones, believe it or not, there's more than one Jones in the United States of America, and there's more than one Alex Jones. And their entire system of matching, this is the big hot shots with our massive national security apparatus. Their entire matching system is first name and last name. That's it. And even in their propaganda, their instructions that go with this matching system, hunting down double voters, they say that they have social security numbers, but if they don't match, they ignore it. Over 1 million, almost 1.5 million names on the list have mismatches of middle names. So like Alex Eric Jones would be matched with Alex Thomas Jones. And that's our hot shot national security apparatus. And what are they doing? It would be funny. It would just be slapstick with this idiotic matching list and accusation of millions of people voting twice. The problem is that they can use this to selectively knock out your vote.
You don't have to wait till Election Day. You can vote all week. I mean, you can only vote once. This isn't Chicago now. You can. I'm teasing Chicago. I'm messing with you. That was a long time ago.
By the way, the state of North Carolina, which is having a very hot race right now, has proposed, and get ready for this, they want cameras in the voting booth that would take your picture while you are voting. So they could, if your face does not match the face recognition software identity check, I'm not making this up. I'm not making this up. They can exclude your vote. But that requires them to tag your picture to your particular vote. So gone is the secret ballot. And they say, oh, this is so someone doesn't vote for you. Come on. We haven't had, It almost never happens in the United States that you have identity theft. Someone walks in and votes in your name. It almost never happens because it's easy to catch these guys. But what they want to do is take your picture while you are voting, tag it to your vote, and then make it subject to challenge. Oh, that your face doesn't match the software recognition image that we have.
Well, and I imagine that that's a test pilot for the rest of the country in the future.
Absolutely. That North Carolina is pulling this stunt, and they'll have a choice point-like company, you know, and, you know, and so it's the problem is that they're, first of all, they're clowns. They don't know what they're doing. So they don't do it right. So a lot of people are going to lose their vote, as they have with this so-called double voter game. And also the most vulnerable people. This is how you win elections. You can knock out, in Florida, they knocked out 58,000 people. Bush won the presidency by only 537 votes. With this double identity stuff, they're not going to knock off 3 million people. They are going to knock off, I can tell you right now, Virginia's already removed 41,000 people suspected of voting twice. And I went, by the way, I was just in Carolina. They hired an FBI agent to run this program. I said, if people are voting twice, have you arrested any? No. I said, isn't that a felony crime to vote twice? Yeah. So why don't you arrest them? Well, it's not easy. I said, you got their names, you got their addresses. You're FBI, you've got their phone numbers, you've got their social security numbers. I mean, you're telling me you can't get these guys? No, it's not easy. So I got the list, by the way. I got 2 million of the names.
I bet you did.
And if you go to gregpalast.com, you can see it. I got 2 million of the names. And I went out and met some of these so-called double voters, these criminal double voters that ought to be in jail. And one guy, I'm not making this up. I went to one guy, he was in a wheelchair in a nursing home. I said, did you vote here? Did you vote? It was in North Carolina. Did you vote here in North Carolina and also in Virginia? He says, I swear on a stack of Bibles that I didn't vote in those 2 states at the same time. And I said, aha, I got you. I was lying because he was in this wheelchair, and there's no way he could have picked up a stack of Bibles. So, you know, but
well,
this is, you know, this is what they're doing. They have, so they can pick out anyone they want. Say, you voted in 2 states. Your name's Alex Jones. And there's another Alex Jones in North Carolina who also voted. And that means you voted twice. Your vote doesn't count. That's the game that's being played right now. Oh,
yeah, and I don't see them stopping anytime soon. You've been uncovering this sort of thing for a long time now. I'm anxious to see what you uncover as a result of the midterms. Thank you for joining us, Greg Palast. GregPalast.com is the website. And be sure to check out his latest bestseller. It's called Billionaires and Bailout Bandits, How to Steal an Election in 9 Easy Steps. The Huffington Post, it says that this book is the most terrifying book a Democrat can read. So, and all of his books and documentary films are not just earth-shattering bombshells of vital information, but they're also very humorous at times. Greg Palast has a great sense of humor and a great attitude in the face of corruption. And his books, let me tell you something, folks, they're bestsellers for a reason. So check it out, GregPalast.com. Mr. Palast, thanks for joining us today.
You're the best. Thanks a lot.
All right.